Hi, this is Dr. Pratima back with you. Let us discuss the origin of energy bands and the classification of the materials. So, in my last lecture, we have got introduced to the module 1 where we have extended the Schrodinger wave equation to the chronic penny model. In the chronic penny model, we have seen the allowed energy levels and the forbidden energy levels. I have also given a touch of the E versus K diagram, which helps you to understand that the allowed energy levels, like they form as a continuum and we can call them as a band. So though I didn't go much into the picturization of E versus K, I have just given a hint of it because that's not there in your curriculum. So adding to that, we will now go in deep to how the band is formed and what are the different types of the bands formed. And depending upon the bands and the gap between them, how are the materials classified? What are the different types of materials, their properties and their applications? Come along with me. Can electrons in an atom lead to the formation of bands? Let's start with this question. We know that every isolated atom has electrons in their own energy levels with discrete energies. So these atoms, when they combine together, they form solids. So if you combine large number of atoms and if these atoms come together, the electrons in their orbits in the atom, will they have the same energy as before the combination of the atoms to form a solid? It's not the same. There will be a change in the energy. That's what this point highlighted in red on the slide says. If n number of atoms are brought together to form a solid, and if these atoms, the electrons of these atoms interact, forming n number of closely spaced energy levels in the place of the discrete energy levels, it's known as a band of allowed energy levels. In addition to these allowed energy levels, there will even be some energy levels which are forbidden in between these allowed energy levels. They are empty regions often and they are called as a forbidden band of energies. This is just a glance, or I can say it as a conclusion. Let's go how this is really formed, the band of allowed energy levels, and how the energy of the electrons will change when n atoms are combined. Let's see. So this in the picture, you can see an individual atom. You can see an individual atom. The atom will often contain nucleus in the middle. You know it very well. And in the first shell, you are seeing 2 electrons, 1 and 2. In the second shell, you are seeing how many? 2 again. And in the third shell, you are seeing how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this outermost electrons are often called as the valence electrons. Why? Because they are the electrons which are in the outermost shell and they will be badly affected, I can say that poorly affected by the nucleus in comparison with the interior electrons. And when this individual atom is combined with the other atoms to form a crystalline solid, then these valence electrons will be much affected in comparison with the electrons in the interior shell. Now, if you have to represent the same atom diagram in terms of the energy levels of the states, this is the way you will have to represent it. So, first shell you have 2 electrons. So, I can write it as 1s2 in terms of your electronic configuration. So, this is 1s2. So, this is for one atom. This is for one atom. And this is 2s2. Because you have 2 electrons in the second shell. In the outermost shell, how many did you have? 3 plus 3, 6. So, in 2p, you will have 6 electrons. So, if this particular one atom is extended to form a solid by taking 10 to the power of 23 atoms. Okay, so then what will happen? Suppose if I take two atoms, let me say that I am taking two atoms, then what will happen? There will be another energy level here where the electron will be sitting here. Okay, so here 1s2, so it will be like this, and here it will be like this. The same here. The same here. And if I'm taking 3, then there will be another here. Okay, and the same here. And the same here. If I'm taking 4, right? So if that's the case, just imagine n number of atoms just forming one another. Then what will be happening? There will be a formation of the bands like very continuously, okay, to one another. So this is how a electron is becoming a reason for the formation of bands through an atom. So this is how the band looks like. For n number of atoms in a crystal, 1s is having n number of energy levels forming a band, and 2s is having n number of energy levels forming a band, and 2p also the same. So moving ahead, if you take sodium for an example, what is it? You have 1s2, 2s2, 2p, 6, 3s, 1. So it has one electron in the outermost orbit. So this one electron will be forming any bond, like if you take chlorine, it forms an ionic bond, you know it very well. So when this isolated sodium atoms are brought together to form a solid, then the energy of the valence electrons spreads into bands. That's what I'm saying. Like this 3s1, that is the one electron in the 3s orbital, it forms a very close like neighborhood with the neighboring atoms, thus forming a molecule and thus forming a solid. You know how the molecule is forming, right? And how this forms an NaCl ion, you might have studied in your +2. So that's how the bonding happens. So if this is the case, if you look into the band diagram, there will be one particular distance called equilibrium spacing, which is for every atom, it has its own equilibrium spacing to form a molecule with the neighboring atom. So for this, you can see at one particular distance R0, I can say that there is a merging of the bands. Okay, so what is it here actually? This is the lower level of the valence band, and this is the upper level of the valence band. And you can see that at one particular instant, the lower level of the conduction band is merging with the lower level of the valence band, and the upper level of the conduction band is merging with the upper level of the valence band. So this is what will happen. Okay, so that these electrons will be shifting from the valence band to the conduction band, and there will be some bond formation, and the resultant solid will be happening. So if you have to understand really how a band is formed, in the previous slide you have seen the band is formed and there is a merging of the band, but really how really a band is formed, let's try to understand it in a more detailed way. If you take a single isolated atom, you understood that the electrons in each orbit have definite energy, and in the case of solids, all these atoms are brought together and the outermost electrons are affected by the neighborhood atoms. This is a like I can say that the revised statement of our previous slides. But if you are taking two atoms, what is happening here? There will be a change in the energy level. I want to let you understand how this energy levels of the electrons changes. It will be either higher or lower than the original energy of the electron. How is it so? If I take 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, and 3 is 1. Okay, so if I combine it with another, this is one atom, take sodium, and if I combine it with another atom of the same, like let me draw it a bit smaller because there's no space. 1 is 2, 2 is 2, 2 is 6, and 3 is 1. Okay. So what do you understand here? This one electron which is in the valence shell will always have more attraction towards this nucleus in comparison with this 6, 2 and 2 electrons in the third, second and first orbit respectively. Do you agree with it? So this close approximation which is leading to the force of attraction will cause a change in the electrons, definitely, right? So this will try to come out and there will be a change in its energy. It might lose its energy. Okay, so you know that in sodium atom, this one electron will try to come out and forming a sodium plus ion when it merges with a Cl minus ion. So that's what is happening, like because of the ionization energies and the electron affinities of an individual atoms, they will try to lose or gain electrons from the neighboring atoms. So thus there will be a change in the energy levels of the electrons in an atom when they are combined to form a solid. I hope it's clear for you. Let's move ahead. So this electrons of the same in the same orbit, they are exhibiting different energy levels, and this different energy levels, if you group them together, it is known as an energy band. For example, if I am taking one atom and draw it in the form of a band diagram, then what is happening? This is the first band, this is the second band, just as we have drawn like this. Okay, this is the first band and this is the second band, and this is the last band. Let me take that there are only 3, if there are only 3. Okay, so this is the valence band. So what will happen now is, this valence band is the band where the energy levels of the valence electrons are bound to the atomic structure of the substance, just as I have shown you in the previous slide. So in the normal state, what will happen? These electrons are involved with the covalent bonds in the crystal and they occupy the valence band. And now at present, because there is a conduction band, there is a covalent bond, the conduction band is empty. It is empty. Okay. So this is at normal state. This is at normal state. So if you raise it to the higher temperatures, what will happen? This valence band, which has the electrons, they will acquire this energy which you are giving it in the form of higher temperature, like heat, and they will move to the conduction band. They will move to the conduction band, and they'll occupy here. They'll move here and they will occupy here, leaving a vacancy here. We will look more in detail in the coming lectures how will this happen. So now what is happening at a higher temperature? The electrons are moving and sitting in the conduction band. So I can say that this conduction band is a band which has the excited electrons. The excited electrons are carrying the higher temperature. Hence, in terms of if you are an electrical and electronics student, you can understand that this is having, the conduction band is having electrons which can be propagated as current. And this conduction band plays a very eminent role in separation or classification of the materials, because this conduction band carries free electrons. So the electrons which are like popping up from the valence band, excited and entering into the conduction band, they exhibit free nature and hence they are known as free electrons. If you go into the classification of the materials, they are mainly dependent on, I can classify the dependence factors into 2 types. Okay, all of you know very well that they are classified into semiconductors, conductors and insulators. In your previous classes you have studied why they are called so, and this will be definitely a revision lecture. But let's look into why they are classified and how they are classified. they are dependent on the first term, which is the widths of the forbidden energy gap. What is the forbidden energy gap? The energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band. For example, here, this is the forbidden energy gap Eg. So if you are raising the temperature, then it's not so easy for any sort of temperature for the electron to just jump from the valence band and go into the conduction band. But it needs a certain energy which is enough for this electron to go and sit in the valence band. So it has to cross this gap. So it needs so much of energy that it is greater than this gap, right? Only then it can jump over it. So you should take the food enough that you can cross the extra mile, right? If you just take a little food and if you want to run for long, you can't do it. It's just the same. So this electron, which is there in the valence band, if it has to go to the conduction band, it needs an energy minimum as that of this energy gap and more prominently greater than this energy gap. So this energy gap, how much is it there between the conduction band and the valence band, plays a very important role in the classification of the materials as semiconductors, conductors and insulators. And there is also one more factor. What is the conduction state? As you know very well, insulators don't at all conduct, conductors conduct very well, and semiconductors, they are tailor-made. Like you can play with them. You can do whatever you want with them. You can either reduce, you can either increase by doping materials into it. Yes, you can do that. So the conduction mechanism or the state or the how the conduction is taking place, how the material will conduct, or I can say this word is very clear for you to understand. The ability of the material to conduct current or to raise the electrons from the valence band to the conduction band when an external temperature is given. So these two factors play an eminent role in the classification of the materials. So we know that the materials are classified into metals, that is conductors, semiconductors and insulators. We are seeing here very nicely that in conductors there is an overlap, that is a forbidden energy gap is 0, and in semiconductors there is a comparatively very lesser energy gap compared with that of the insulator, which is which is having a very high band gap. So the ability in the insulators is very low, and in metals it's very high, and in semiconductors it's very medium. We know that very well. Just let's revise it in a very prominent way. So this structure of the bands, that is the conduction band, the valence band, the conduction band, and with the energy gap between them, or whether it has or whether it doesn't have, whether it is medium, this dictates the behavior of that particular material properties in terms of its electrical property. It may be any physical property, it may be mostly the electrical properties you can study. Why? Because these electrons play a very eminent role in carrying the electrical properties of the material. So let's see what are the conductors. This is the valence band and this is the conduction band. So if you want to raise the electrons from the valence band to the conduction band, no need. They just can move very freely from the valence band to the conduction band because there is no any energy gap. The energy gap is 0. I can just write the energy gap as Eg. Okay, it's 0. So it's very easy for the electrons to swim from the valence band to the conduction band, and hence they are very free. And when you give any external source, like when you place this material in a higher energy source, it can gather some potential from that higher energy source and they can conduct. Hence you call them as conductors. And these materials are mostly fall in the form of metals. And let me revise for you in the form of points. There is no forbidden energy gap between the valence band and the conduction band, and the two bands overlap. That's what you see here because there is no energy gap. And even at room temperatures, a large number of electrons are available for conduction. And if you give any additional energy, this has very good number of large number of free electrons, and thus they can conduct. And if you are placing it in an electric field, the electrons gain energy and because they are overlapping, this energy which is additionally given to the free electrons is sufficiently enough for the current to pass through, and this can happen directly from the initial state. And these conductors have very low electrical resistance. Resistance is always inversely proportional to the conductance. So if the conductivity is high, resistance will be low. Conductors are very high in conductivity, so the resistance will be very low. Resistance is nothing but the opposition of the current flow, and this is of course dependent on temperature even. And the applications, if you see, these are mostly used in wires and cables for carrying the electric current. The examples are gold, copper, silver, aluminum, etc. And insulators, you are seeing a large energy gap. So what will happen? What will happen? What do you think will happen for these electrons to rise to the conduction? It's highly impossible at room temperature. But studies have been done much on the insulator, like glass is, and silica is an insulator. But we can see now conducting glass where they are doping it with some extra material and letting it to conduct. So there is a possibility for the material, they're like insulators nowadays, for it to conduct at higher temperatures or even at higher alterations of the material. So there exists even about that is greater than energy which is the greater than 7 electron volt, and so it's very impossible for the electron to shift to the conduction band from the valence band, and it has very high electrical resistance and it doesn't allow any flow of current, and so they stay as insulators at room temperature. But they may at very high temperatures, very high temperatures, if they are subjected to very high voltage, they may conduct, and this is very rare mechanism. And if that's happening in terms of the studies of the electrical properties, you call that temperature where the insulator is starting to conduct, as you call that phase as a breakdown of the insulator. So that is the inherent property of the insulator, that it never conducts. So the examples are given on the slide, and the applications, insulator means it won't conduct, so you normally use them as a protection against the shock, and these are also protection against the high voltages, and you can use them as a prevention from the electrical shortage between the cables in circuits. Coming to the semiconductor, the energy gap is neither too large as an insulator or too low as zero like a conductor, but the forbidden gap will be around 1 electron volt, which is very narrow. So if you are giving an energy by heat at room temperature, that's enough. Just you place it at room temperature and just give some heat, that's it. It can lift this electron from the valence band, let it go to the conduction band and make this place a vacant site. So at room temperature, the semiconductors are really capable of conduction, but at 0 degrees centigrade, that is at absolute zero, minus 273 degrees Kelvin, all the electrons of the valence band, they stay locked in the band and they behave as insulators. So it needs some temperature. At room temperature, they behave as insulators, and the forbidden energy gap, it depends on the temperature. As the temperature shifts, the forbidden energy gap start changing. Okay, so for example, for silica, it is like 1.21 to 3.6 times 10 to the power of minus 4 times the absolute temperature. This is the in electron volt. So this is the energy which every electron in the valence band needs to raise to the conduction band. And if you see for germanium, this is different in comparison with silica. So for every material, it has its own energy gap, and that temperature should be given according to this energy gap so that the conduction will happen. What exactly is a semiconductor? What did you understand by the semiconductors? Because this from now we will be concentrating more on semiconductors, not on insulators and conductors. So I just want to revise whatever we have studied till now. Semiconductors are materials that have conductivity in between conductors and insulators, and they can block, they can even block, or they can even allow the flow of current, and we can take complete control over the material. And they are mostly modified, like whatever you want. If you want to block the flow of current, that is, if you want to reduce the conductivity and enhance the conductivity, you can add the impurities accordingly, and you can modify the material. So that process of adding the impurity is known as doping. It's known as doping. And it the properties will be like you can allow the current to flow in one direction, or you can amplify, or you can convert the energy. You can do whatever you want by using this doping method. And whatever the electrical conduction, it's just because of the movement of the electrons. And once the electrons are shifted from the valence band to the conduction band, the vacant site left over by the electron in the valence band is known as a hole. And definitely when an electron is shifting from the from the valence band, leaving a vacant site, we can take it that the hole is also moving, and hence this movement of the electrons and the holes is responsible for the electrical conduction inside the semiconductors. Silicon, germanium and arsenic falls in the examples of the semiconductors. If you see the applications of the semiconductors, you can use them as op-amps, ICs, and transistors, diodes, resistors, and capacitors. And you can also see them in your daily life, like in your televisions. You are seeing your LED screens and the integrated chips in the personal computers, the ROM devices. And you can also see in your mobile phones and the smartphones. If you are swiping the smartphone screen with your finger, you are able to see that it's responding, because it's the sensors inside it are responding. It's because of the coating, and especially tin doped indium oxide is used as a coating for the smart screens on your mobile phones. And in your automobiles also, you are able to see like rear view mirrors, which are coated for reflection coatings with these are metal oxides, which are again semiconductors. And in advanced medical care, like your hearing aids, implants, and noise reducing of the signals used in the scanning devices, or like MRI and CT scans, all these are having semiconductors. So semiconductors have a wide range of applications all around your world. And if you have to study the semiconductors in deep, you will have to first understand the classification of the semiconductors. Based on the composition, they are divided into two types, elemental and compound. In elemental, it's like single elements like a silica, germanium. And in compound, you can compound in the sense a combination of elements. You can combine them like inorganically and organically. Inorganic, again, there are polymers like polypyrrole, and in organic there are anthracene, and in inorganic you are like cadmium and selenium, you can, and gallium, arsenic and phosphorus, you can just combine together, and these will fall into wide range of applications. So these are known as compound semiconductors. Whereas if you have to classify it in terms of the presence of the impurities, why are the presence of the impurities? You make the presence of the impurities in the semiconductors to alter the properties of the semiconductors according to the application you want. For example, if you are not doping it, that means if you are not adding any impurity, then that pure semiconductor, which is not at all being added, or if it's not doped, you call it as an intrinsic semiconductor. And if it is doped, depending upon the type of the dopants, first if it is doped, it is known as extrinsic, and depending on the type of the dopants, the extrinsic semiconductors are classified into N-type and P-type semiconductors. In your curriculum, we just concentrate on only this part. Okay, the presence of the impurities, how they go, and what are the intrinsic semiconductors. Can you really count the number of the electrons in the valence band, and after the temperature is raised and the electrons from the valence band shift to the conduction band, can you count or can you quantify the number of the free electrons in the conduction band? If so, then can you bring out an expression for the Fermi energy level which is there in between? How will it shift with temperature? Going to the extrinsic semiconductors, what are the different types? Can you really understand the shifting of the Fermi level as the conduction mechanism goes in the extrinsic semiconductor? Why are they called N-type and why are they called P-type? What does N stands for? What does P stands for? All these will be covered with in your curriculum in my coming video lectures. In my next video lecture, we will be seeing the intrinsic semiconductors and the calculation of the electrons in the valence band. Hope I meet you in my next video lecture. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.